Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, it's once again that time of year, RPG a Day 2022. If you're not aware, RPG a Day is a month-long participation that many of us content creators on YouTube or Twitch or other platforms we spend each day doing a video talking about various prompts that we get from August 1st through August 31st. And, so every day a new video. They tend to be fairly short topics, or at least I'm certainly going to try to keep them that way. I will follow these in order. In previous years, I didn't. Sometimes I bounced around or I skipped over some. I'm also going to pre-record some of these so that when I do have time, I'll bang out a few and then just stagger them over the next couple of days to have them drop each day so that I kind of stay up on it. Because that's usually been, my detractor was that, I'd fall behind and then I have to try to catch up again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-record several, and you'll be able to tell because I'll be wearing the same shirt, the same getup basically, or the same scene behind me when I do them in series. So without further ado, let's talk about today's prompt. So today's prompt is, who would you like to introduce to role-playing games? Now, when I look at this, as my channel. Even though my channel tends to focus on tabletop role-playing games, I'm actually open to discussing any type of role-playing game. It could be, tabletop. It could be computer role-playing games. It could be single player. It could be multiplayer. It could be massively multiplayer, or it could be solo player. All right, and when I say solo, I mean even tabletop solo playing as well. So a broad range of role-playing games when I talk about them. And so when I look at today's prompt, who would you like to introduce to role-playing games? I'm going to give you a little bit of a history about myself as a gamer. So I started around 1977. I was, 10, possibly 11 years old at the time, and I started with Dungeons and Dragons. And throughout the late 70s, all the way up until about 80, somewhere between 87 and 89, I kind of, I kind of lose track of when I actually stopped. But it was definitely before AD&D Second Edition released, because I hadn't bought any of those at the time. So I know it was definitely before then. I want to say it was 87 or possibly 88, even though those books started to release around that same time. And then in 1990, I entered the military. I joined the Army in preparation for Operation Shield and Desert Storm, and that's the time frame that I served. And I served both active duty and then reserve components for that pretty much 8.5 years. I did one extension of time of my service, and the entire time of my service, certainly my active duty time of my service, I just wasn't participating in any tabletop role playing games or any gaming in general. I mean, we the units that I was assigned to, it just wasn't there. I started with the 364th Area Support Group, which was a reserve component in out of Fort Totten in Queens, New York. And then I shifted when that unit kind of was brought down. I shifted over to the 800th Military Police out of Uniondale, New York, and served the remainder of my time with them. And when I was deployed and when I was back home and still within fell back into the reserve components of the of my experience, I did not have any opportunity was just certainly not aware of anybody in my units who were playing tabletop role playing games. To my best recollection, I mean, the only games that we played card games. We, watched games, sports on the, at sports bars at various forts that we were, stationed at generally during training operations or our FTXs and such. And I mean, we played cards, dice. I was never a great dice player. Anyway, never really quite took to it. But there was no role playing. I mean, I don't know if it was just, just the nature of the units that I was in, because most of the people that I was associated with in the military were police officers. They tended to be really police officers and lawyers and such. So it was it was a military police unit, and there were- I just didn't have that experience when I was there, and I really, it's one of the things that I feel that I missed out on, because I hear a lot of stories of from military veterans who are also tabletop role players, and they said, oh yeah, when I was in the service, we played all the time. And I mean, I listened to Luke Gygax, obviously, military veteran, son of Gary Gygax, played all the time, where, or a lot, I should say, when he was in the service. And, even though it probably makes more sense that he would, I just didn't have that experience. And I feel that I missed out on that. These past 7 or 8 years, since I've really gotten re-engaged in the tabletop role-playing hobby, because I was just MMOs and computer RPGs and everything for a good span of about 15, 20 years prior to returning to tabletop. I have encountered, obviously, military veterans that were playing in the system, and I found that, and this is a bias that I have, and I have several military veterans that are in my current AD&D First Edition campaign. I just find that I enjoy playing with military veterans. I think that they bring a just a different mindset to role playing. They're less risk adverse in many ways. I think that they just have a perspective of playing that I've noticed other players just don't seem to have. There's a definite difference. Just like there's a difference when we're playing role playing games with with women as opposed to men. They just bring something different to the table. And I also have a female player in my group as well, and she definitely does bring a different aspect to the game. She's also a military veteran, so that's on top of that as well. So and again, I fully, fully claim and accept the bias, that that's my preference. But that's the group that I would really like to introduce to RPGs, as, anyone who's a veteran that has never gotten into RPGs before. They have no experience with it. That's the group that I would like to bring in, which obviously means that I'm saying that the group that I'm looking to bring in would probably be in their, early to mid 20s, bringing them in, or possibly even older. And so that's going to change the dynamic of play as well, because I am looking to, bring in older players to the, or I should say more mature players to the table as well. And I don't mean just, emotionally mature, but physically mature, age-wise mature as well. And it's just, that's the group that I would most like to bring into the hobby as a whole. I think that it would be an overall positive for the hobby. Bring in some of that that perspective, and primarily bring in the fact that they're not as adverse to risk or character death, or they tend to be more open to a grittier, not just exclusively like grim dark, but but just a grittier, more combat oriented, more tactical oriented. Like I said, my group of at the time when we first started this campaign, there was 9 members of the group, and they were all experienced role players, whether they be military veterans or not. But they all brought to the table a real tactical way of approaching the challenges that their characters were approaching, and real balance of their abilities and an understanding of each other's abilities. And I think a lot of that comes from, in some instances, their military training, in other instances, just their long experience of being experienced tabletop role players. So that's pretty much it for day 1. I will move on to recording day 2, which is what is a good game to introduce players to tabletop role-playing games. So I will pick that up next. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. And if you are a veteran and you want to jump in on any of my games, and I have slots open for you, I'm looking to expand some of my play times and kind of expand like one-shots and do things like that. Certainly leave that in the comments section. I'd love to have you on. And next video, I'm going to kind of build on that and go with the next with the game that I would recommend you start with, particularly for you if you're military veterans as well. So once again, thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Take care.